everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 5 of season 2 of Tsurune. I have waited to watch this episode. I've gotten any more where I try to stay off of Twitter because I'm usually, I don't scroll a lot on Twitter, but I'll check it periodically throughout the day if I get bored or something. And I have been avoiding it the last several weeks, especially until I watch this episode and the episode of another series, because there's so many images that pop up on my timeline. I'm like, I just can't. I can't be on it and potentially be spoiled. And so I'm like, no, I'll just stay off till I watch it. And so these last few days I've been like, I really want to watch episode 5. So I've been just dying to see it because the last episode of Broken Tempo, just setting up that our boys are slowly starting to, like, Minato last episode figured out the code. He cracked the code. Minato figured out, okay, I get what was wrong. It was me. It's like, yes, it was you. Maybe you're going to figure it all out, right? But there's still a lot of unspoken tension, especially between, like, Kaito and Nanao, that whole scene on the train, Nanao standing up. Nanao has constantly been this anchor, and I wanted to kind of bring in some of the comments from previous episodes to talk about before we start this, because there's been 2 characters I've really wanted to see character development on for this second season. We saw character development with Kaito last season and Minato and Seiya, and somehow Shu's character development has been like out of left field. I was like, oh, we're getting this? Okay. But honestly, the 2 characters I've wanted to see the most development with has been Ryohei and has been Nanao, because of how they've been set up in season 1. And that kind of ties into our comments with here. Woosh and Sweebian talks about how Nanao and Seiya help out Kaito and Minato in different ways. And I thought it was really good to note, especially going into this episode, because there seems to be some unresolved tension with Kaito and Nanao that the series is eventually going to have to deal with. Like with Seiya takes a very hands-off approach to helping Minato. And that's in part because of their past together. Like Seiya has seen Minato at his worst and knows Minato's personality, and that Minato sometimes, like in the last episode, Minato just needs to step back, get out of his own head, and view things objectively from the outside, and then Minato can work through it, right? That's just kind of the kind of character he is. And Seiya knows that. And so he just kind of lets Minato figure things out on his own. He's like, no, he'll get it. He'll get it. And then by the end of this last episode, he does. With Kaito gets so overthinking. He takes things so too seriously. He overthinks things. He connects them to himself more. He puts more self-harm on himself than anything else. And Nanao knows that. So Nanao knows that for Kaito, trying to just diffuse the tension is the best way to go. But the thing of it is, even characters like Nanao and Seiya have breaking points. They have points where they're like, I can't do this anymore. And last season was Seiya's breaking point, where he's like, nope, I'm out. And then Minato had to bring him back. In this episode, I'm wondering if Kaito and Nanao are going to get to that same point too. Because Nanao pushing Kaito back off the train the last episode, I'm like, okay, he's getting to his breaking point. We need to do something about this. And so I'm hoping Kaito comes in to talk to him, or what we end up doing with it, right? But that was a really good comment, Woosh, and I'm glad you put that. And then Aaron said that they were worried back in, episode 2 about Ryohei's storyline. And I'm like, me too. So I've not forgotten about Ryohei and that sister, and what are we doing with this? Because here's the thing. The thing that makes me scared for Ryohei in this season, and hopefully we get a season 3, KyoAni, that'd be great. You did 3 seasons of Free. You could do 3 seasons of Tsurune. Just saying. I really hope that we get with Ryohei. I have a feeling that's going to be the storyline that breaks me, is because if you look back at episode 2, everyone in the series has like a support system. Like, even though Shu and Sei don't have their parents around, they have Tomo the butler. So he's an adult support system. With Nikaido, he has, granted he's sick, but he has his mentor who's a support system that's an adult. Kaito and Nanao have each other, and there's obviously Kaito's older sister there. So there's some kind of older support system, right? With Seiya, he has his parents, apparently an older brother, his mom. Minato has his father. Every character in the series has an adult support system in place, except maybe Ryohei. We've not seen his parents. and his sister's a shut-in. We don't know what the situation is there. So that concerns me a little bit. That makes me think, oh, Ryohei may have a worse home life than we think, and he's putting on a front of being this golden retriever when things are really not that good. And I'm like, I don't know what to think. So I'm very curious to know what character development we get with Ryohei, but I feel like if anything's going to tug my heartstrings, it's going to be that, because KyoAni, I know what they're capable of, and I'm like, I've already cried once in this series. I don't know. So I'm curious about that. Seiya, according to HBanana7, Seiya and Tamir and 1,000 others pointed out something that I went over my head, but HBanana was the first one I read, saying that Seiya saw the white feather on Minato after season 1 when he ran away, and now in this last couple episodes, episode 1, he's made the mental connection of, oh, you went to see Masa. That's what this is. And you can take that a lot of different ways. Maybe Seiya will realize that Masa is a big influence on Minato's life, and he will maybe not hate him as much. Or maybe he'll lean in and hate him more and be jealous of him because Minato's been seeing Masa. So it's like, ooh. But I'm glad y'all pointed that out. That was good to know. And then Chuya's hat. Chuya's hat was pointing out some of the visual things back in episode 1 that I was like, should have seen that, about the whole thing with Nikaido's situation on the archery range. Because yeah, when we go back to episode 1, they are on that rinky-dink archery range, and I just didn't even think about it at the time until we get to like episode 4 and see it then. But yeah, I like that Chuya's hat pointed out the sneakers, that Nikaido wears these really run down, dingy sneakers, and usually when you see them on the range, they're like in the socks and everything. It's very respectful. Nikaido, again, I went talking at length about Nikaido in the last several episodes, but his character fascinates me, and just how he wants to be against the system. And it's like, okay, okay, we'll talk about that, I'm sure, as we go. It reminds me, there was a video essayist, Lindsay Ellis. She does lots of videos on YouTube, but she did one on Rent, and it was just kind of about how like people that are against the system, but the system's put in place to help you. I kind of get that vibe with Nikaido, and it's not anything against Nikaido, but I get that analogy kind of clicked in my head, and I'm like, that's exactly what this is. Nikaido wants to be against the system, but the system in this case isn't necessarily bad, and Nikaido's treating it like it's bad. So it's a fun dynamic. I want to get more into Nikaido's character as we go, but I'm more interested in knowing the main conflict that's not been resolved at this point is between Kaito and Nanao. So it would make sense if we focused on that. But with this series, last episode, we got like 5 different things happening at once. So who knows what they'll give us. It's Tsurune. You just never know. But I woke up this morning, got my coffee, and was like, you know what? I want to watch episode 5. I want to do it so I can get on Twitter and get on the Discord and talk about it. So that's where we're at, but I've talked way too much. We need to start this episode. So I hope y'all enjoy, but let's not waste any more time. We are going to start Tsurune, episode 5 of season 2, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. This episode made me want to cry. I was really on the verge, and I think I was like, hold it together, Romania. But this episode made me want to cry because it was so beautiful. Oh, I don't know. This whole season has not missed at all. It has been on point, pun intended. It has just been so good, and getting a Nanao and Kaito centered episode, especially focusing on Nanao's side of it, clearing up the stuff with the middle school kids, like that plot line gets resolved. Well, it'll get resolved until they see Kaito again. That's the thing. Will they see Kaito again? Because I don't think Nanao is going to tell Kaito what they told him, because that's not his place, right? It's not his place to say that on their behalf. Will they see Kaito at the national tournament? Maybe. I don't know. If they're just spectators, will they see him there? But oh my god, this episode. This episode was so sincere and beautiful, and sweet, and God, it just made me so emotional. And then I was Ryohei the entire time, like, guys. And then Minato and Seiya teaming up to get on to come together and get them to go together and do things. Seiya and Kaito, I see your ship. I see it. It's on the radar now. I'm here for it. Oh my God. God, this episode was so good. Where do I even start? Where do we even start? And we get like some explanation about the family situation with Kaito and Nanao, why they're all together all the time. Their families live together practically. Like, Yep, they either live together or they are close and they're always together to eat food. But they're always at the same house eating, right? So I feel like they do live together. I'm for it. I like that we're getting a lot of different family dynamics in this show, that it's not just like everybody lives with mom and dad or just mom or just dad. Like the family dynamics being explored are all very different. And I like that, but I'm so full of emotion. I don't know where to go with this discussion. So obviously the most clear thing to do is to talk about Kaito and Nanao and their relationship and how Nanao has kind of burst out of his shell, realizing what he wants, and the idea that neither of them, they both bring so much to the table for each other, but neither of them want to lose to each other. That's the thing. They want to constantly like one up each other and be better than one another to make themselves and each other better. And it's like, and I love that by the end of it, of course, it's a Kyudo duel that they do against each other to bring it out. Here's my thing. I think that if the duel had kept going, I think that Nanao would have won. I think that would have been the case. I think Nanao would have beat him eventually. But it's Schrodinger's cat. We'll never know. We'll never know. And I love that Kaito, by the end of it, he's like, we're going to be in this battle with each other for the entirety of our lives. We are always going to try to make each other better and to be better for each other. And it's like, I love it so much, right? So I want to go through this episode because there's so much that's good about it. I could gush all day. We'll try not to gush for hours about this episode, but it's just so freaking good. But the idea that they've always been together, and okay, KyoAni can do no wrong at this point. They really can't, because the storyboarding of how these scenes lay out, Woosh and Swoopy shared in the Discord, they spoiler tagged it, so I haven't seen it, but they were just like storyboards for episode 5, and I was like, when I watch episode 5, I'll go back and look at that. But yeah, I could already tell what it's probably going to be about, because yeah, the story, the choreography, the cinematography of the scene, the animation, the lighting, the colors, the glimmer, the shimmer. I'm like, KyoAni, can you, I want KyoAni to have the Mappa staff so they can animate everything, but it just makes me, I say that, but it makes me appreciate shows like Tsurune even more, because they are such gems, especially to look at, but then the emotion and everything in them, I'm like, this is the best looking show of the entire year so far. Nothing will convince me otherwise. I'm like, no, it's the best looking show. And emotionally, I'm like so invested. I'm like, more people need to watch Tsurune. They just do. But the idea that they both were racing and Nanao goes back to help him after so there's this concept here that Nanao, as kids, holds himself back for Kaito and to help him. Like, that's the thing. He holds himself back for Kaito to help him, right? And Kaito, on the other hand, he defends and stands up for Nanao. Because he wants to, right? That's the thing. He wants to stand up for Kaito and them. He wants to stand up for Nanao. They both want to help each other. That's the problem. But they're both competitive in different ways. And so I like the idea, he's like, quit being a softie. You got to win when you get the chance. And so Kaito's like, well, come on, just don't worry about me. He's like, don't worry about me, help yourself. And Nanao's like, but I do worry about you, and I do want to help you too. He's like, I feel like there's a strength in both of them where they're, again, this idea of push and pull. It's constant back and forth. Kaito's like, I got this, you help yourself. And Nanao's like, no, I've got this, I need to help you. And so it's just that constant back and forth with them. He's like, this is why you get bullied. And he's like, well, what's that got to do with anything? And then they just go back and forth. And then, of course, Nanao's like, just got the sparkly eyes. And he's like, I'm so sorry. And then Kaito's like, well. And then the thing of it is that Kaito deep down, he is vulnerable and soft and emotional. But he puts on the hard front, right? Because he can do that. And there's a part of Kaito I believe is envious because Nanao, he can emote that softness with ease. Like when the guys bully him and they're like, oh, you took our girlfriends. And he's like, they followed me. I didn't take anything. And it's like, that's almost worse, is the fact that they left the guys on their own volition. It's like, yeah, no, Nanao had nothing to do with that. So, and you could see why he would get bullied because Nanao is a very attractive person and he has girls like swarming him all the time when he's not even trying. He just has this natural charisma around him that attracts people to him. And you could see why that would get him bullied because he's so outwardly kind. He doesn't project this like hardened exterior like Kaito does, even when we as the audience know that that's not really true. Kaito doesn't really have that hard. The exterior is just a front, right? And he's like, you're in luck. Nobody's going to lay a hand on you with me around. And he's like, you're going to get in trouble if you start fighting again. And he's like, I don't care. He's like, so I'll have to cover for you. So yeah, they're just defending one another. Kaito's like, I'll defend you with my fists. And Nanao's like, I'll defend you with my words. And so they make that pact that they'll help each other that way. And there's that push and pull all these years. He's like, no one ever stays mad when I'm there apologizing. And then they just look at each other and kind of laugh about it, like, and then, God, and then it cuts to the cinematography where, like, the screen narrows, and Kaito and Nanao, I love that they both narrate this scene. They both back and forth narrate, and Kaito saying, ever since then, I always felt like I've got to be there for so Nanao says that, I've got to be there for Kachan. And Kaito says, I'm the only one who can look out for Nanao. Like, they both believe that they are the only ones that can look out for each other, right? They don't want to, they both have that mentality that, no, we've got to be here for one another. That's just the way things are. Go back to this scene. Yep. And I felt the same way today. Yeah, I thought things would be the same forever. And I think that they will still be that way. I think that they both, like Saya said, this is a growing up moment. This is a moment of kind of moving towards adulthood where they both are realizing what they mean to each other and what they've always tried to do for each other. But moving forward, it's like they both can acknowledge that, yeah, we can still look out for one another, but we're growing up. We can also take care of ourselves as well. And it's okay. And that's okay that things don't have to always stay the same. They can change a little bit. It's fine. And just recognizing that and vocalizing it and communicating it is just, it's all the good things, right? Oh my God. And then, yeah, they can't just they're not both kids anymore. And then now he just, was like, I'm not always going to have to do this. So this big house that they live in, or at least this house with the different rooms and everything, it's got some different parts to it and everything. But yeah, they're always at the same house, so I guess they do live together. And so I wanted to write down like the family dynamic here. The two women, they both look almost the same. They're sisters. Yeah. Look how pink it is. Like the one cooks for the other. But now the one woman, she has a ring, like Kaito's mom. I'm assuming it's Kaito's mom. We'll see. She has a ring still on her finger. So, but here's the thing. Minato's dad still wears his ring on his finger, even though his wife is dead. So that doesn't mean anything. That they both look, it seems like they both either have lost their husbands. I'm assuming that's the case because why would they live together? If their husbands were just away for work, there wouldn't be any reason for them to live together or to always be together, right? But they are. So I feel like they both lost their husbands and then they've moved in together. Okay. So we have Nanao. He has his mom. And Kaito, he has his mom. And then there's a sister there. All right. And she says, look how pink it is. And she's like, I bought this special cooker. Okay, Nanao has a sister. Yeah, and Nanao's sister looks a lot like him. Like the one sister with the bun, she is like his twin practically. She looks exactly like him. And she's like, he picked the wrong day to skip having dinner with us. Yeah, which maybe that's Nanao's mom with the pink cardigan, and maybe Kaito's mom is the one that cooked. Maybe that's the case. Ah, interesting. And so then there is the one sister. Okay. And then there's another sister there too. The one sister, I'm not sure if I think that Kaito just has the one sister. And then Nanao has two. And they're like, where's Kai? And like, you told him dinner's ready, but our little master says he's not hungry. Okay, the one sister looks more like Nanao. She just has like reddish hair more so than the others. So yeah, so he has two sisters. Okay. And one looks younger and one looks older. Okay. But she's barely younger, like maybe like less than a year or so. And then his sister's older. They're all sitting at the dinner table together. Was there like 7 of them, right? Okay. Wouldn't have had made so much if I knew we were down 2. And then Kakun. I'll bring Kakun's dinner up for him later. She looks like Nanao too. So yeah, so there's Nanao has the 2 sisters and Kaito has the 1. Okay. And they're all just living in this house together. You're too nice to him, you know. Interesting. Okay, and then we cut to... And the whole time, though, Nanao's wearing the hat that Kaito got him. So it's like Nanao, he isn't wanting to let Kaito go. He wants Kaito to still be in his life. He wants to acknowledge Kaito, but it's at the point where he's like, he doesn't know what to do. And he's mad at Kaito because Kaito's not communicating. He's not vocalizing. And I feel like Nanao knows that things are not going to get better for Kaito unless he starts doing that. That's the thing. Nanao's not worried for himself. He's worried for Kaito. Of course he is. Nanao isn't worried about his own problems. He's worried that Kaito's are not going to get any better and they're just going to lead to him constantly, just getting worse and worse. And for Kaito, he feels like it's his fault Nanao is like this. So he's internalizing everything. So it's just self-destructive, right? God, I do love that KyoAni can animate a crane game. I kept wanting to see Albert or somebody there present during the scene, but... Okay, so we come back to Minato. Minato, don't forget about him. He's figured out what's wrong. I'm glad he finally tells Nanao. I'm glad these boys finally communicate back and forth to each other. They solve the problems, right? I'm glad that that's the case. And so, but God, the tension between Kaito and Nanao. If you've ever been fighting with someone, especially family, like the tension is so real. Like with friends you can distance yourself because you probably don't live in the same house or see each other often, right? Or as often as you do family, or at least depending on the situation. But with friends, I feel like there's enough separation there that even if you're best friends, there's enough separation there that, yeah, you can be mad at each other, but then you kind of, you talk it out afterwards, and you either talk it out afterwards or you don't see them anymore. It either goes one of 2 ways. You either you disconnect from that friend and you don't see them anymore, or you find a way to make it up, right? With family, it's a little bit harder because oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes you can't just cut out family. I mean, you can, but it's very difficult and it can impact other family members and there's a more chain reaction to it. Again, it differs from family to family. But in Kaito and Nanao's situation, they live in the same house. So they can be mad at each other for a while, but it's eventually going to keep bubbling because they're tied to this space together. And that makes that tension just so palpable. And it just, like, the moment they're in the room together with everybody else is just kind of like looking like, what do we do? This isn't our business. They're family, so it's definitely not our business. So what do we do? But yeah, so if you were a Kaito and Nanao shipper, unfortunately, I think this episode kind of is the nail in the coffin because they are most certainly relatives, first cousins, most definitely. But that's fine because You can ship Kaito and Seiya, apparently. I don't ship Nanao and Minato, although I do like their scene together. And so Minato is still practicing. He is still practicing on the sidelines. I wondered for a second if Nanao was not going to show up to practice, if Minato was going to practice with the groups, but no. Masaki is not letting him do that yet. I do think it's good that Minato has figured out what the problem is. And so, but the cool thing is that Minato doesn't just, I was almost expecting Minato to like have a powwow and call a session where he admits his wrongs and talks with them. He doesn't do that, which in hindsight kind of makes sense with Minato's character. He wouldn't do that. He tells Nanao because he thinks it's his fault that they're arguing, and Nanao doesn't really say it's not. So that's kind of fun. We'll get to that. But I like that Minato is like, okay, no, I figured out what it is. I'm not going to use it as an excuse to get back on the range. I'm going to just keep doing what Masaki tells me and improve myself. And Masaki's kind of like, okay, maybe you figured it out. All right, well, we're just going to keep doing this. But he gives Minato more advice, and Minato takes it very seriously. But man, that tension. And so where you use your strength is key. And yeah, I like Masaki is still telling him to improve things. And so Ryohei says, like, Minato looks like he's in a better mood. And Seiya's very knowing. Seiya's like, I think he's finally moved on. Like, Seiya's like, he knows that Minato got it from the video that they watched together. He's like, no, he's figured it out. But again, Seiya, it's not his place to speak in Minato's behalf. So he doesn't say exactly what happened. He just kind of says stuff. And Ryohei's like, oh, good. Glad we've moved on from that. But man, just the tension between the two of them. And Ryohei, as soon as Ryohei looked around the corner, I was like, he's going to come up, he's going to try to figure out what the problem is. Because Ryohei is like me. I was like, I would be Ryohei in this situation. I'd be like, I want to get to the bottom of this. Let's figure it out. I love that Ryohei, Minato, and Seiya all work together as friends to help their friends get through their argument. Like, they're all going to come out stronger because of this, right? They're all going to come out stronger because of this. I feel like Seiya and Minato are in good places. Now Kaito and Nanao are going to be in good places. Ryohei's the only one we got left. And we're not even halfway through the season, so we got plenty of time for Ryohei to rip our hearts out with his storyline. We have tons of time for that, right? Maybe it's not so bad. We saw a little glimpse of the sister. Maybe it's not so bad. I say that now. Famous last words, right? But yeah, Ryohei just can't sit still. He's like, this is awkward. He's like, is something up with you all? And the thing of it is that Nanao, Kaito bubbles it all in. When Kaito he like crawls into his shell when he gets mad. And Nanao gets snarky. Nanao's like, just lets him have it. He's like, oh, it's because Kaito is being like this. And he's just not like, Nanao gets biting. He cuts with his words as soon as he gets like fed up. And Kaito just, the part where Kaito nearly punched him, oh, that part there was just, and that little piece of hair falling like KyoAni style. Oh my God. But Kaito held back. He held back. Unlike what he did in middle school. And poor Ryohei. Ryohei's just like, ah! Okay, so we do cut to Ryohei, who, again, I'm just saying, there is no mom-dad presence in this house whatsoever. He's doing his own laundry. He's by himself. His sister lays the candy bar down for them to eat. I don't think there's any parents with Ryohei. And that may seem weird, but watching other anime, it's not uncommon. Now, do I think his parents are dead? I don't know. Because, like, in Free, Haru's parents worked far away, and he wanted to go to Iwatobi, so his parents let him just stay in the house by himself, and Makoto would come check on him. So that's not uncommon. In Kuroko's basketball, Kagami lives on his own, and he's a freshman in high school, so that's not uncommon. So depending on why, and Ryohei said he wanted to come to Kazame to play Kyudo with Minato and Seiya. So it's possible that Ryohei moved there on his own, but why is his sister there? I don't know. It doesn't surprise me his parents aren't there. It's just, we don't know anything about what the situation is. And that is a little bit weird. It's kind of like, well, what do we do with this? But Ryohei, of course, is in his own head, thinking it's his fault for starting a fight, and clearly seems sad. But then the sister leaves the chocolate bar for him. And he's like, oh, thanks! And she just waves at him. And that's all we see. I don't know. Maybe actually seeing her out in the open makes me feel a little bit better. Like, okay, maybe things with the sister aren't that bad. Maybe she's just really quiet and kind of a shut-in. Maybe that's it. But their house is so like dimly lit and gloomy, which is such a weird contrast because Ryohei is such a sunshine character and he's always so bright and bubbly, and the fact that his house is like so kind of muted and quiet and kind of has this like little thin layer of gloom over it is so startling. He's the last one to get the character development of our group. I feel like Ryohei is going to connect with Shu because they both have sisters that seem very polar opposite of them. So, and Shu is kind of quiet and maybe seems more like the sister of Ryohei's. So, I don't know. And that's curious. I want to know more. But yeah, so we cut back to this house here. Okay. Now, that's not the same house, is it? I want to cut back to this. That's not the same house. So do they live in different houses? I guess they do. Okay, I want to cut. Yeah. So, or are their houses are right next to one another. Oh, their houses are literally next to each other. Okay. All right. Case solved. So Kaito and their house are literally side by side next to one another. So, okay, they're not coming back to the same house every night because that would be super tense, but they do live right next door to one another, and that's why they eat together all the time. Okay, so either the dads are always gone on work and they're not there, or they've passed, or one has passed, one has not, and that's why they always eat together. Which I guess if you were sisters and you live next to each other, makes sense, right? And your kids get along, makes sense. You'd want to have time together. Okay. That makes sense. So, okay, we get Nanao's room, finally. There are frogs everywhere. It's very cute. What's interesting about Nanao's room is that there's the green wall. I like the green accent wall that matches the frogs. He has so many frog toys. So many. But other than that, his room is very minimalist. Like, Kaito's room has, like, the music everywhere, and it's kind of busy and loud colored, which is kind of matches his personality. And Nanao's is much more subtle. But it's very distinct. Yeah, his room is very distinct. But yeah, all the frogs everywhere. I love it. And so he talks about how, it's not like they haven't fought before. But why am I like this? And then we cut to Kaito playing the exact same game. Like, they're both more similar than they give each other credit for, right? And then Lucy the cat. I love Lucy the cat's like, what's wrong, Kaito? Like, she is ready to be there as his emotional support animal. And then, yeah, and he thinks back to the middle school with them. And so the thing about it is he gets onto those two others because he said they didn't care about the sport, which again, Kaito has always been like, he wants you to be as passionate about Kyudo as he is. And I think that's part of his problem with Nanao up until this point, is that he doesn't think that Nanao is passionate about it, right? He just thinks that Nanao is doing it to fall. He's kind of having the same, Nanao is kind of being thrown in the same boat as Seiya, where Kaito and Shu kind of have the same feelings about Seiya and Nanao, right? That he questions whether Nanao is into Kyudo or just following him, which we'll come back to with Minato's conversation. So, yeah, Kaito's thinking, like, is Nanao just following me because he feels like he has to protect me? And he's like, I don't need you to protect me. I can do this. If you don't want to do Kyudo, don't do it. And so that kind of ties to this flashback with the middle schoolers where we finally get confirmation that he just got mad at them because they seemed like an easy club to join. And he's like, and Kaito at first schools himself. He's like, well, I know you think this is the easiest club, but that's not the kind of attitude you should have with Kyudo. That's not why you should be doing it. And the one guy's like, oh, chill out. It's just a game of target practice. And that gets, again, this whole episode, there's like the little lines around Kaito's eyes, and now it's like they've been crying, right? Or sweating or whatever. And then it shows that he punched him in the face. But the thing about it is that guy kept going back to his cheek the entire episode. The one middle school guy, he kept touching his cheek like it was a reminder. Granted, he shouldn't have punched him. That shouldn't have happened, even if the guy was being kind of a jerk, saying it was just target practice. And Kaito being like, realizing he's done something wrong and calling himself a loser. Like Kaito being so hard on himself, being like, I'm not, why am I doing this to my friends? Why am I being this way? I don't like it, right? And so then they go back to the practice and everything, and Nanao doesn't come. Again, this whole look here of Seiya looking at Kaito being like, you know why he's not here. What's going on? Like Seiya giving the eye glances, being like, Seiya's being like, are we? That's why he's captain. He's like, Minato, I love Minato to pieces, but Minato is not observant sometimes. Minato kind of gets his head lost in the clouds a little bit. Seiya is like sharp. He's on it. He's like, I know exactly what's going on. You need to figure it out. And when he looks at Kaito, it's very pointed, like, you know what the problem is. And Kaito's just like, Murr. But yeah, I feel like this is kind of relating to Shu, when Shu was mad at Seiya because he thought that Seiya was just following Minato, and that was the whole reason, right? Which ironically we will touch upon with Minato's conversation. And I like that Tommy Sensei and Yuna and them are just kind of like, and Ryohei's freaking out because he thinks it's his fault that Nanao's not there because he's a sweet puppy dog boy, and he's just like distraught, right? And then this scene with Nanao going through the shop and everything, taking his day off. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of an episode of Haikyuu when there was a second year in Haikyuu that thought about quitting the team. And he quits the team. He doesn't come to practice. He like sits at home in the air conditioning. It's like a hot day. And he's like, oh, if I was at practice, I'd be sweating my butt off. And now I get to enjoy this cool air conditioning and not have to worry about it. And he gets restless and realizes that he actually wants to do it. And he's like, I shouldn't have quit. And he kind of he regrets his decisions, right? And that's kind of how I feel with this episode. Is that that's how I feel with this episode. I feel like Nanao, he doesn't even he walks past the frog toys, doesn't even stop to look at him because he just feels empty inside. He's like, I don't want to go to practice because I don't want to see Kaito. I want Kaito to talk to me. He's framing as he wants Kaito to learn his lesson and admit he's wrong, but the reality is he wants to talk to Kaito, but he wants Kaito to talk back to him. And it's like Yubakas, you just need to figure out what to do. And then he thinks back, seeing the kids run by. He thinks back to when those kids saw the girls like following him, and then they pushed him down, saying, I told you to quit walking home with Mayu. He's like, I didn't ask her. She just came by herself. And the fact that Nanao is so calm about it, like he's so calm and collected, like, no, this is just the facts deal. And that kid gets mad about it. And then that's when Kaito comes in with like a damn jump kick. Like he just comes in out of nowhere and saying, you gotta go through me to fight with Now. Bring it on. And the thing about it is Nanao, I feel like Nanao's never asked Kaito to defend him. He just does it because they're family and they're friends. And that's, part of it. It's so sweet. And then he looks at his hands. And at first I couldn't tell in the episode. I was so in the moment. But you see the blisters on all of his hands, right? The blisters that have formed. And Minato coming back to that conversation about the hands later on is just chef's kiss, right? Just chef's kiss. I love it so much. But yeah. And that's when he talks about Kyudo for the first time, and we see them in his house. For the record, and that photo of the two of them has always been up on the wall, which is cute. For the record, the two of them talking as kids, like Kaito with a striped shirt, Nanao with the overalls, so cute. And Kaito is kind of like Minato in that he had Masa help him. I'm sure that Masa is the one that helped him. I really want to find out at some point the scene where Masa helps Kaito. I want to get that moment, but maybe they'll show it to us, maybe not. But again, there's lots of connections here. So you have Kaito, who is kind of like Shu in their beliefs about whether Nanao and Seiya like Kyoto or not, and how that impacts them as a team. So you have that, but then you also have him like Minato, where they were both trained by Masa or influenced by him, right? But then you have, and that was get Shu on there. But then you have the idea of Kaito kind of like Seiya, where Seiya tells Kaito later on, he's like, look, this is how I needed to communicate and let out all of my thoughts, everything I'm thinking about in the moment, and that helped me grow up and become a better person. You need to do that with Nanao. And then Seiya is kind of like Nanao in that Seiya has been trying to watch over Minato, thinking that he needs help. Nanao kind of does the same thing for Kaito, right? But in the same vein, I feel like both Seiya and Nanao are really similar, because Nanao listening to Kaito gush is kind of like when Seiya was listening to Minato gush about Shu. And so Nanao's like, what's this Kyoto? Why? Like, both Nanao and Seiya didn't have an original love for Kyoto, right? Not like, they weren't instantly enamored like Kaito and Minato were. They didn't just instantly fall in love with it, right? And he's like, I've already applied to the dojo. And that cute little thing where he's got the popsicle sticking out of his mouth, and he's got the little overalls that are too big. Freaking cute. And Kaito's like, this is going to be so much fun. And you just see Nanao kind of be almost like enamored and almost envious of how Kaito can instantly fall in love with something. And that's kind of what I love about these characters, is that they don't just love Kyoto from the depths of their hearts, right? Like Kaito and Minato do. Kaito and Minato instantly fell for Kyoto, and they are like so passionate about it. Ryohei's better at kendo, but he likes Kyoto because of the friendships and because of the camaraderie and because of how it feels, and because it's a softer, more spiritual sport than like kendo to him. So that's cool. But like with Minato and with Nanao and Seiya, they didn't just instantly fall in love with it, but they were kind of inspired by their friends that did love it and developed their own feelings afterwards, right? So, and then he just kind of decides, like, this is what we're going to do. And then we see Nanao hitting the target and being so excited, right? And like that cute little cat face where Kaito hits the target, and he's like he's so proud of himself and he's so excited. But then we established they did not go to the same middle schools. So they did not go to the same middle school. Okay. Or at least the same grade school, maybe? We could put grade school on here, maybe. Question mark. They didn't go to the same grade school as kids, right? They went to different ones. All right. And Nanao, it's like Nanao kind of sees Kaito being so enamored and happy about something, and he kind of feels left out because they've always been together. And so there's a part of Nanao that kind of wants to join in on that. He's like, oh, I want to be with my cousin because he seems like he's having so much fun. And then we cut back to him with the hand. I like there's like a cat photo back there. Like there's just cats everywhere. Kaito is an instant cat man. He just like cats flock to him, right? And he keeps the hat. Nanao, despite everything, keeps the hat. So yeah, so Kaito's kind of being thrown off, and Masa's like, you know what I'm talking about. You know, you're in your own head. Get it up. And Kaito's like, I get it. But he's just distracted, right? And then we cut, and he's thinking about Nanao. And then Nanao, okay, so they're in two different middle schools. Okay, so Nanao, he saw him in grade school. Nanao saw Kaito in grade school starting Kyudo, and was kind of like, well, I want to be part of that because I want to be in that same world as him, right? Like he got inspired. He's like, well, I want to try that and see if I like it. So they went to different middle schools. different middle schools, but Nanao picked up Kyudo on his own. And you could argue that he did it to because he was worried about Kaito. That he was worried that he was going to get into a situation where he would need his help. But honestly, there's more to it than that, because Nanao, they went to different middle schools. Like, if you see them walking together, Kaito has like the very traditional, like the black middle school outfit, and Nanao's looks more like preppy. So they went to different schools in middle school. So it's not like Nanao could be with him all the time, right? They both they were together in grade school, then they were separated for a couple of years in middle school, and that's when he picked up Kyudo, and Kaito's like, "What, are you copying me?" And he's like, "Oh, it looks so easy and all. I figured maybe I can do it too." And he's like, "Well, you might be good with your hands, but there's more to Kyudo than that." So Kaito doesn't instantly dismiss him. He's just like, "Well, it's harder than you think, but he doesn't exactly get mad that he's doing it." So yeah. So Nanao's so coy and mysterious, be like, "Oh, I just figured it looked easy. I would do it with you." No. He's like, "It's not as easy as you think." And then that's... Okay, so we had, real quick, this boys tournament. He says it's not as easy as you think, but Nanao was really good at it. And he hits the target. And it says junior high preliminaries, boys individual competition. Okay. And then he looks over and winks at Kaito. And Kaito just nods at him. And then we cut back to... I'm glad they cut away at that moment, because we cut back to Kaito, like, taking out the targets. And that's when Ryohei comes up and he's like, "Man, I'm sorry. Is it my fault that you guys are all fighting?" And I like that Kaito tells him no. Kaito's like, "It's not your fault, but this is not your business. So I don't want to talk about it. But no, it is not your fault. There's nothing you had to do, Ryohei. It's okay." And Yuna says it looks like he got turned down. I was like, "Yuna, are you crack shipping Ryohei and Kaito? Get out of here." Do not ship Ryohei and Kaito. No. But girl. And so Seiya is setting up the camera. And so it's so weird when they call him Kisaragi. It's weird to call Nanao Kisaragi because I never think of him as that last name. It's so bizarre. It's like, no. Those two had a real fight. And Minato believes it's his fault. Minato and Ryohei, being puppies that they are, believe that it's their fault the two of them got in fights. It's like, you two. And Seiya's just like, "This is ridiculous." And Seiya's like, "I guess that leaves us no choice." I like that Seiya's like, "Well, looks like we've got to solve this mystery, gang." We got to get the group back together. I like the shot instantly next of Nanao with his hand on the ring, because it almost made me feel for a second like it was him and Kaito holding hands. I know that's not a thing, but it just made me have that kind of belief. But then Nanao sees the kids from Kaito's middle school, and they're talking about a Kyudo program, saying it was pretty good. And then they're talking about it, right? And Nanao remembered them from the tournament. And then we cut back to the middle school preliminaries, where everybody on the team are all gathered talking to one another except Kaito. Kaito is off by himself. He's not with the team. He's sitting by himself. And Nanao noticed that. And so he asks Kaito if something's up. And Kaito says no. And then Nanao's like, "Well, then I'll go ask your mom," right? And so, or he asks his mom and says apparently he got into trouble at the Kyudo club. And she's like, "Mom got called in school because of him." Okay, so the woman with the short hair is Nanao's mom. Okay, so the woman with the long hair is Kaito's mom. Okay, that makes more sense now. And then, yeah, the one sister says she got called into school because of him. And then the one sister says, "It's too bad you aren't at the same school." So, yeah, so that's the impetus he has, because Nanao kind of worries that Kaito is alone and in trouble. And he kind of feels like, man, maybe it, which kind of sucks for Nanao a little bit because there's a bit of pressure there for him, that he feels a little peer pressure from his sister. But not just that, he feels pressure, I'm sure, internally that Kaito he's going to be in trouble in school without him there. And so Nanao feels like he needs to go and support Kaito, which isn't fair to Nanao. He shouldn't have to feel that way for his cousin, that he has to go out of his way and do something like that. But I feel like Nanao, on the other hand, also wants to go to that same school with Kaito. He wants to be there for his cousin because he loves his cousin. So it's a very complex feeling, right? But then the guys from middle school notice him, and they're like, "You go to Kazumai, don't you?" And he says, "Actually, Kachan's..." And then he stops and is like, "Oh, well, you guys wouldn't know that nickname." And he respects Kaito and says, "I'm Kaito Onogi's cousin." I like that he doesn't do the nickname for these two. He gives his cousin the respect by saying his full name. And they're like, "Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah, I hear he stirred up trouble back in junior high." And he apologizes on his behalf. But the one guy says, "Well, you don't have any right apologizing for Kaito." He's like, "It's fine." And he says, "Yeah, sure, he's arrogant and condescending and foul-mouthed." And as he says it, they're both like, "Yep, he's kind of the worst." And he's annoying and quick to throw fists too. "But I wouldn't say there's nothing we ought to thank him for." And he touches that part of his cheek that Kaito punched. He's like, "Having him around got us both to take Kyudo seriously." Like, he just has that air about him, right? He's like, "That's the only reason we're still at it today." So Kaito doesn't realize the influence he's had on both of them, whether good or bad, but he's influenced them to keep at it. And that kind of goes back to what Minato ends up telling him. Minato talking with Seiya and saying that however you started doesn't matter. It's why you keep doing it. So you may have started to help Kaito, but you do it for yourself. Like, you keep in this activity because you want to be here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be trying as hard, right? Or you wouldn't have kept doing it. He's like, "Now you're the type of person you wouldn't keep doing it." He's like, "You wouldn't keep doing it unless you like it." I love that they're like, "Oh, we still don't like Kaito's style, but we do appreciate him." And now it's just like, you can tell now it's like, okay, like that, this solves the problem, right? This is what it is. Like, he gets to the root of it and he's like, "Yeah, thanks." Like that. I feel like Nanao just had a big weight taken off his chest. Like, okay, my cousin was a baka, but in the end it all worked out. Good. Glad we sorted things out. Good deal. And that's when he sees Nanao. Or he sees Minato. And Minato's like, "Yeah, I just skipped. I couldn't lay my eyes on Kachan." And Minato admits, he's like, it was my fault. I threw Kaito off at the tournament. It's my fault that he's been in a rut. And Nanao doesn't say that it's not. He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You sure did do that." He's like, "But Kaito won't say anything, and that's what's frustrating him." He's like, "The only person I'm mad at is Kaito for playing it cool and not communicating with everybody." He's like, "That's the problem." He's like, "You may have been the spark, but you haven't been fueling the fire." Yeah, Minato's like, and then now is like, "You may have started this, Minato, but you're not the reason it's kept going, right? There's more to it than that." And then I like that he's just like, "Don't try to argue. It's not gonna work. This is just how it is." He's like, "I've made it this far just trying not to let him beat me, you know." And now this part here, he's like, "We've been in competition with one another this whole time, and that's been what's kept us going, and it's what's kept me going is being in this competition with him." But then he says, "You know how he can be. I thought I'd better look out for him. And I can't do that unless I stay ahead of him." So that's his thing. When he started Kyudo, he was like, I only really started Kyudo because he did. And then it cuts to Seiya, who only really started Kyudo because of Minato. And so then Nanao says, he says that I guess there's only so far you can push yourself through something you don't really like. And Minato, I'm so glad Minato's like, no, you like Kyoto. You really do. You just don't want to admit it, right? Or you don't think that you do. He's like, I mean, you don't like it. He's like, you love Kyoto. And now I was like, what? And then I love that he grabs his hand and he says, you have an archer's hand. You don't get those from half-assing it. I love that. He's like, I'm the Ochi, and I love that he says, he's like, well, I'm the Ochi. I see everybody in front of me, so I can see how passionate they are. He's like, I see when you panic, when you get excited. And then it's almost like when I was like, well, I mean, I didn't see that at the regionals. That's the problem. I'm also not shipping with you. That's not it. But I love these, like, especially during tournaments. He's like, that's why I can tell. It doesn't matter why you started, but you love Kyoto now. So that's all there is. And then now it's just like, oh, well, okay. And so then we cut to... So, I mean, Nanao is really easy to get to the point. Nanao's communicative. He gets it. He gets what Minato's saying. It's just like, it clicks instantly. He's like, okay. Kaito is the baka we have to break the shell out. And Seiya's so perfect for that because Seiya is just like this force. And... what I love about it is Kaito, it's almost like there's a wall there, and Kaito can't break down that wall. Seiya's like, nope, I'm in charge of this situation. I know exactly what to do. And Kaito's like, I guess I'll just, it's like he goes up against the wall and Seiya doesn't budge. And then Kaito's like, okay, I guess I'll listen. Right? Also instantly tracks all cats. And Seiya just talks very bluntly and to the point. He's like, our club feels the tension. It's hurting our performance. And he talks in a way that Kaito would understand because Kaito's serious about Kyoto. So Seiya's like, look, I'm going to break down the statistics. You're passionate about it like we all are. You'll know that we, in order to do good at nationals, need to get it back up. So you'll see that this is a problem. And he just sits next to Kaito and says that you take everything on yourself. And when Kaito gets mad about it, he's like, oh, you've heard this from other people before? He's like, I was just being perceptive. He's like, it probably was Manette. And I like that Seiya plays dumb. He's like, oh, you've heard this before? Someone else has told you this? Was it Nanao? And that's when Kaito gets mad. And I love the cat eye, right? But Kaito doesn't even raise his fist. He's just like, And Seiya's like, well, I guess Nanao does keep an eye on you. And then I like that Seiya's just blunt and to the point. He's not like, he doesn't get emotional. He's even keel. He doesn't get too snarky. He just lays it out kind of very like, this is just the situation. And Kaito's like, well, fine. Do you want me to just go to apologize to him or something? And Seiya says, well, no, not exactly. He's like, what is this? Some classroom assembly? He feels like at first Seiya is talking down to him. Like, oh, is this just like a classroom assembly? You want me to go are we supposed to talk about our feelings and sing Kumbaya? And Seiya's like, no, this is what you're going to do. You're going to be a man and you're going to duel him. He's like, go on and fight, Kaito Onogi. That whole thing, I was like, okay. At that point, I was like, if you ship them together, I guess I see it. I guess I see it. Mm-hmm. Remember how I skipped practice for days before the prefecturals? He's like, I know exactly what you all are going through. And he says, back then I hit Minato with everything I wanted to say, but couldn't. All the stuff that I had kept secret. That's why I'm still here now. I got it all off my chest. I love that he's like, that's probably the day I grew up. I love that that's the day that he left the past behind and moved forward. I feel like that's exactly what he's telling Kaito and Nanao to do. He's like, look, you guys, not to say that you need to grow up, but you need to let the past behind you if you want to move forward and become better. And yeah, it's so good. And then he goes, I love when he's like, I already got permission. I love that little moment where they like, their heads lean down. I was like, okay, you're getting me to ship. Stop. He's like, go beat each other up, talk things out, whatever you want. And that's it. And he leaves it to Kaito. And And so I like that instantly, like, it goes to Nanao, and he's like, oh yeah, he just called me, it's fine. He's like, he just wanted a duel. And I like that Minato's like, wait, what? I feel like Seiya did not tell Minato that part of the plan. Seiya's like, I'll handle Kaito, you handle Nanao. But he didn't tell Minato what he was going to do. Hilarious. Hilarious. I'm a man, same as any. I can't go running from a fight. So I do love this development with Nanao, right? This idea of not running from a fight. Because neither of them do, right? It's the same for both of them. I also like this, though, because I feel like Nanao, his whole life, has gotten this impression of being softer and... I don't want to say the word feminine or anything because it's not true of him. But I feel like Nanao's character gets the reputation from the people around him in the show of being this softer, gentler, maybe more submissive character. And that's not Nanao at all. Nanao is like, he is a very much like wants to be the one kind of dominating the conversation in the room. Like he wants to be always the one that's on the up and up the most, that's kind of in control of the situation, right? And so I feel like with a character like him, it's easier to say, oh, he's the soft and gentle character. But I'm like, no, Nanao is very much not that way. If anybody's that way, it's Ryohei. But, which is hilarious. So I like that line saying, like, I'm a man, same as any. Being like, I am no weaker than anyone else on this team. I think that kind of, you have a character like him in another sports anime, and he may be seen as the weaker character. But that's not the case with him at all. He's like, no, I am sure. He reminds me kind of Sugawara from Haikyuu a little bit. He kind of has that vibe a little bit. But Nanao's just like, I'm no weaker than anybody else on this team. And he's like, I'm not going to run away from a fight. I'm going to take it head on. And I love that. I love that character development. And then the whole sudden death match between him and Kaito, like KyoAni animating the sunset, the big, bold, contrasting colors, and it's slowly getting darker and darker. And the two of them, and the idea that they're just sweating as they keep firing, and it keeps going. And then we just see all the holes in the target. They just keep going over and over again. I love it. And they're just still neck and neck, right? And then as they keep fixing things, they're like, well, why don't you give it a rest? Well, I'd ask you the same. And as they're like taking the targets out and going back and forth, they're just arguing back and forth and talking and communicating and laying it all out there. I love the idea that meanwhile, Ryohei, Seiya, and Minato are just off in the bushes watching the whole thing, like eavesdropping. It's great. And like, you're just gonna let this water be on water under the bridge again, aren't you? Quit hovering over me. And he's like, it's too much. You were never one to last very long. And he's like, well, we're not kids anymore, right? I'm not going to bow out. I love it. And then they say, you might have always picked things up quick as a kid, but Kyoto isn't a little game. And he says, listen to yourself. You're the one who got all teary-eyed because I beat you in a race. And then Kaito's like, I never cried, but you did when you got picked on. He's like, and I never asked for your help. And he's like, well, I watched out for you. He's like, no, I watched out for you. And they're both like, we both watched out for each other, right? Oh my God. And then Kaito, he can't finish the sentence, right? I love just the animation of him when he says, I'm going to beat you, and just the sunlight hitting him like, KyoAni, why? How did you just manage to do all this? And then he misses. And I love how calm Nanao is. Saying that, no, he says, you're not the only one who wants to win. And that gets Kaito's attention, right? That's the thing, is that's the moment. He doesn't say, I'm going to beat you, Kaito. He says, you're not the only one who wants to win. Like, telling Kaito, being like, you've thought this whole time I've just been following you to try to keep you safe. He's like, that may have been part of it, but he's like, I'm also a competitive person like you, and I want to win just as badly, and I love this activity just as much as you do. Can't you see it, Baka? And then, God, the string breaking it's brilliant, right? He's like, I want to beat you. And the string breaking, it's just so good! So good! Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the two of them just laughing about it. Like, dude. And he's like, well, you don't get to decide that you lost. He's like, I missed, so it's a draw right now. And he's like, the competition is going to last us a lifetime. I'm not going to lose to you. And then now being like, fancy that, because I'm not going to lose to you either. Oh, I love it. I love that they're both like, we're going to just fight each other competitively and make each other better forever. Oh, I love it. I love that Ryohei's just like, and then of course, Seiya's like, have they no shame? And then I love Minato is just so happy. He's like, they were a mess, but still. And Ryohei's like, thank goodness, seriously. I love it. Where you use your strength is key. And that goes back to what Masa was telling him earlier in the episode. Like, where do you use your strength? Do you apply it towards each other in competition? What do you do? And then these two just, it's push and pull just like in Kyoto. Oh my God. Oh, y'all. Oh my gosh. These two. This episode was perfect. This episode was perfect for Nanao and Kaito. I loved it so much. I loved all the parallels, all the connections with our characters. I didn't put Ryohei up here. Ryohei, I feel, has a little bit of connection with Kaito in that he's passionate about it as well. I feel like he definitely has a connection with Shu through his sister. And then I feel like Ryohei kind of has a connection with Nanao as well, because Nanao is very upfront about his feelings and he just says what he thinks. Nanao does, and Ryohei is kind of the same way. But I feel of all the characters now that we have left, like this whole thing with Kaito and Nanao was wonderful. I loved the family dynamic. It was great. And then I feel like Ryohei is our one now that we haven't had a lot of focus on, right? But there is a little bit after this scene. We don't just end it at the range. We go back to their houses. And now you can see, like, if you notice, like the fence around Kaito's house, which that's so metaphorical. Oh my God. Because when you look, you can't see it for the trees, but when you we've always cut back to Kaito's house, right? We've always come back to Kaito's house. The first time we really go to Nanao's house is this episode. And we see Nanao's house. The landscape outside, it's all open. There's no fences. It's all open, right? So it's very easy to come in and out, right? That it's easy to talk to Nanao, easy to communicate with him. Kaito's family and the way his house is set up, there is a big giant wall around their house and trees and everything guarding it. That's such a representation of Kaito's entire, like, Kaito's self is so guarded. But once you get inside, it's all warm and friendly and wonderful. What a great man. That's using your setting as a mold, using your setting as a representation. Look at that. Okay. So then we have Kacchan whips up something new for you today. So it's the two of them cooking. I love they both have the aprons and Kaito's sitting there with the ladle. It's great. And then he's like, I love that we go to the family. So we have the moms. I want to go back just a hair to see if we get a shot of them, like before he lays the plate down. Okay. Yeah. So we see Nanao's mom with the two sisters. And then we see Kaito's mom and the other sister, right? And he said, and I get steak fried rice. I like that they're like, oh, it looks great. Except for Kaito's sister, like, this is a whole plate full of oil and carbs. How could you? I love she blames him. I love it. And he's like, well, shut it. No one's making you eat. He's like, do you want to starve your sweet sister? And say, how can you not eat when it smells this good? And he's like, don't give me that face. And they say, Minami, you should work out more. Okay, so his sister's name is Minami. Okay. Minami. Okay. And then we cut back to the shot of them there. Oh, it says you quit your club. I wonder what club she was in. She's like, I've got entrance exams. Okay, so she's a third year. Okay, so she's a bit older than him. All right. And then we cut to the two of them sitting there as kids eating the watermelon. Oh, so cute knowing that they've been friends since they were kids. Shut up. Shut up. This episode was great. I loved this so much. So yeah. A perfect episode. Perfect episode between Nanao and Kaito. I could not love it more. And now I'm really excited to see what we get with their characters later on. So yeah, I'm pretty excited, y'all. I really enjoyed this episode. I hope you all did too. But I'm a little worried that we're going to get Ryohei focused and it's going to be really sad, but maybe not. Maybe it's not going to be so bad. But we're not even halfway through the season yet. Not even halfway. This is a 13 episode season. We're not even to the halfway point. So I am savoring each episode of Tsurune and loving what we're getting so far. So I hope y'all are too. So I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I'm excited to hear your comments down below. But yeah, I will be back next week with episode 6 of season 2 of Tsurune.